All right, Virginia, you make a bowl game for the first time in 7 years, and this is what you've got. Opening kickoff for a touchdown, Joe Reed, 98 yards, and then nothing. Navy blasts Virginia 49-7, and the game was just about as competitive as the score would indicate. Navy, with a triple option offense, could not be stopped. They ran it at will all afternoon long. So both teams came in at 6-6. And you would think, based on previous results of these types of matchups, so you take a mid-level or even into the lower rung of the ACC, Virginia team that went 3-5 in the ACC, 6-6 overall, but they're not taking on one of the best group of five teams. So generally the group of five can compete with the Power Five if you look at the results year to year, when the better teams in the group of five, Boise State beat Oregon in the Las Vegas Bowl, for example, when they match up against a mid-tier to lower-tier team from a Power Five conference. We saw that a few days ago when Duke, as a mid-level ACC team in the same ilk as Virginia, actually lost to the Cavaliers 27-21 earlier. Duke at 6-6 and 3-5 in the ACC, the exact same performance as Virginia, and lost the head-to-head. Well, they took on Northern Illinois from the MAC and just bludgeoned them 36-14. That game wasn't really that close in the second half as they blew them out 22 straight points. But in this matchup, Virginia just didn't show up, and Navy weathered the cold conditions there at about 22 degrees at Annapolis and got the home field win. Virginia did have some key injuries and suspensions along the defensive front. They had two defensive ends that prior to the Virginia Tech game, so they have already missed one game, but just the one game, Jawan Moy and also Stephen Wright suspended and then later decided to transfer. So they had to move a tight end, Richard Burney, to the defensive end position from offense to defense. And if you don't have defensive end play against the triple option attack, we saw time and time again, Navy got to the edge and they burned Virginia. Kind of surprising considering four stellar defensive players on the Cavaliers roster in Quinn Blanding, of course. We know about him, the All-America safety. Micah Kaiser, one of the best linebackers in the ACC. Jordan Brown has played well here in 2017. And also, Juan Thornhill made a few tremendous plays in the backfield in upending Navy ball carriers, and he is a bullet out of the defensive backfield at times and a tremendous cover player as well. So Virginia has individual players on defense who are really good, but as a whole, they were completely outclassed in this one. It was a Navy team that uncharacteristically suffered from penalties this year. A 6-6 Navy team that usually wins 8 to 10 games, plagued by penalties. Top 5 in the nation over a number of years in fewest penalties, was one of the top teams in penalties this season, and it cost them a little bit here and there early in the football game. All right, it's a Virginia team that's been unable to stop the run and mostly not been able to run the ball, and that's a bad recipe in particular, but especially against a Navy team that needed to throw one pass. It was a pass incompletion the first 3 times that they went back to pass. It was actually turned out to be a bad idea because they were running at will, and then they decided to pass, and they got thrown back for sacks 3 consecutive times that they tried to pass during the course of a drive. Again, we mentioned Joe Reed with the touchdown out of the gate, 7-0 Virginia. This happened to Navy 2 years ago. Same bowl game, same conference opponent, the ACC. The Pitt Panthers ran back the opening kickoff for a touchdown, 7-0, just like that. Navy came back to win the game 44-28. Again, Virginia just could not stop the triple option. First 2 drives of the game, 12 plays, 68 yards, 7 plays, 55 yards, touchdown runs for Navy, led by their tremendous quarterback, Malcolm Perry, who unfortunately, after carrying the ball 16 times for 114 yards and 2 touchdowns, had to leave the game in the third quarter with a foot injury that had to have x-rays, his right foot. He was capably replaced by Zach Abey, who ran it for 13 carries, 88 yards, and 5 touchdowns from Zach Abey, who has a lot of experience. It's not like they brought in a backup quarterback who did not bring experience to the field. Navy has 3 deep at quarterback, and they're in good shape. So the Virginia defense, after the first 2 series, actually bucked up for a couple series and held Navy down, got the 3 and outs, or at least caused them to punt. And it was a competitive game for, about a half a quarter at 14-7. The Virginia offense, too reliant on Kurt Benkert. He wasn't the Kurt Benkert that we saw against Miami when he lit up the Canes for 3 quarters. And he's had to carry this offense on his back. Virginia needs to bulk up the offensive line, find some offensive linemen, coach them up, and find a running game. They need to find explosive players out of the backfield as well. Benkert on this day, he's got the NFL arm. He can make all the throws, but he was so erratic and missed so many throws on this day. 15 of 35. Did suffer from the typical Virginia drops at the wide receiver position. That's another issue that has plagued this team the entire season. Benkert, 15 of 35, 133 yards. Andre Levrone is a player who caught 7 touchdowns this year and caught, I believe, 34 passes. On this day, he had 3 receptions. But time and time again, he always, every time I watch Virginia, which is 5 or 6 times this year, he drops a couple passes. Drops a couple meaningful, impactful, third down conversion type passes, and he did in this game as well. He also constantly complains about being interfered with when he's not. And that happened a number of times for Levrone. He's a senior. He's gone. Lester Coleman made a great punt in the second quarter down to the 1-yard line. So Virginia's down at this point 14-7. They pin Navy down to the 1-yard line, and they give up constant 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5 running plays for third down conversions. Virginia did, again, play better defense for a time in the second quarter. All-ACC Defensive Rookie of the Year, Brent Nelson, who had 58 tackles this year and 4 picks, knocked out one of their leading ball carriers, John Brown. Unfortunately, he left the field and would not return. But it was Nelson who came back and actually missed a wide-open tackle on Perry, who ran a 4th and 1 for a touchdown, the third touchdown of the game to make it 21-7. So Virginia not really in this football game at all. They looked putrid on offense. They finished with 143 yards of total offense to 452 for Navy. Alameda Zacchaeus, he dropped some passes when he was wide open. Virginia wide receivers could not gain separation. Again, issues all over the place for Virginia. I think going forward, offensive line and explosive players on offense. Of course, Kurt Benkert, an erratic quarterback who suffered from poor offensive line play throughout his career and the drop passes that we mentioned. He's gone, so they look for their next quarterback. Benkert could have thrown 2 touchdown passes. His wide receivers were wide open deep down the field, and those would have been long touchdowns. The guys were wide open and would have taken it into the end zone, but he missed on those throws. Navy, you had a play on a 4th and 1 play for Virginia where Jarvis Pallou and Tyler Sales met the ball carrier. He forced the fumble recovery. Navy took over at midfield. And then on the Navy 4th and 1, in which they, number one, tried to draw Virginia off sides. Then they called a timeout. And we're looking to possibly punt the ball when they couldn't draw Virginia off sides. And I thought, my goodness, you're running at will, Navy. Just keep running the offense. No reason to try to draw them off sides. And what happened? On the 4th and 1 play from the 30-yard line, they run for a touchdown. They break it open. That happens several times on short yardage plays where Navy broke it for a long gainer. All right, so there's your final. Not a good day to be a Virginia football fan, and not a good day to start our bowl play. Ho Hummer won a game that I shut off early in the 4th quarter at 49-7. Navy finishes at 7-6. Virginia finishes at 6-7. We look ahead to Virginia's schedule in 2018 out of conference. They've got Richmond, a date at Indiana. For some reason, these two teams have fallen in love with each other. This is the third consecutive year Indiana and Virginia are playing. And then they also play the Bobcats of OU, head coached by Frank Solich, who beat UAB in their bowl game last week. Navy's out of conference, and you've got to realize that they play 13 games on this schedule, and they also only play the 8 conference games. So they've got 5 non-conference opponents next year in Hawaii, Lehigh. They've got Notre Dame, they've got Air Force, and they've got Army. Pretty loaded schedule for the Navy Midshipmen next year. All right, Navy at 7-6, Virginia 6-7, but the record's close, but not the two teams at Annapolis this afternoon at the Military Bowl. Mark Rogers TV providing instant analysis. Would love to get your comments on Virginia football, Navy football, heading toward 2018, what these two programs need to do to continue. Looks like Navy's in great shape, as they have been, despite one of their more down regular seasons, losing to Army for a second consecutive year, and the 6 losses. And of course, Virginia much improved over 2-10. So I don't want to completely down the program, because they've taken great strides this year. They beat Duke and they beat Georgia Tech in particular in the ACC. They gave Miami a game late in the year, and they played within 10 points of Virginia Tech as well. But much to work on for the Cavaliers to compete in the Coastal Division next season. Mark Rogers TV instant analysis. We look forward to the games tonight. I expect much more spirited play and more talented play out of Oklahoma State, Virginia Tech, obviously kicking off right now. We got Michigan State out of the Big Ten taking on Pac-12's Washington State Huskies, and maybe the best game matchup-wise of the early postseason, Stanford and TCU. Can't wait to see that one as well. We'll catch you next time right here on Mark Rogers TV.